The rain-slicked streets of Dublin were harsh, but for Eli Cruz, they were home. His coat, patched and frayed, did little to keep out the cold. His shoes were worn through at the heels, allowing water to seep in with every step. Yet in the midst of this dreary Irish winter, he carried a spark from thousands of miles away, the streets of Manila, the bustling markets, the laughter and cries of people who fought every day just to survive. Eli worked long hours in a small restaurant, mopping floors and washing dishes, sending half of his meager earnings back to his family in the Philippines. Each coin felt like a lifeline, a piece of Manila carried in his pocket. At night, he would hum quietly to himself, brushing aside exhaustion, singing Elvis songs he learned as a boy. His voice, raw but full of heart, floated above the clatter of plates and the hiss of boiling water. Tonight, he saw a poster taped to the restaurant's bulletin board, "Ireland's Got Talent, auditions today." He paused, staring at it with a mix of disbelief and longing. His voice had always been just a secret companion, but maybe, just maybe, this was the chance Manila had given him. Eli closed his eyes, imagining the bustling streets of Quiapo, the smells of street food, the colors of the jeepneys flashing past. One song, one voice, he whispered to himself, his hands trembling. That's all I need. The idea seemed impossible, yet somehow, impossibility was familiar. He had nothing to lose, no wealth, no fame, no connections. Only the song in his heart and the fire of a dream too stubborn to die. And somewhere deep inside, he knew, Manila had raised a fighter. The audition hall buzzed with nervous energy. Contestants in glittering dresses and tailored suits strutted across the stage, each chasing applause, each polished and rehearsed. Eli Cruz, wearing his frayed coat and scuffed shoes, shuffled onto the stage. The judge's eyes flicked over him with polite curiosity, unaware that the night was about to change forever. "I'm Eli, from Cebu," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I clean kitchens here in Ireland. I don't have much, but I have this." He held out nothing but his hands, trembling slightly. The audience leaned in, sensing vulnerability. Then he began to sing. Not just Elvis, but Elvis in Tagalog, layered with Cebuano harmonies, infusing the familiar melody with the rhythm of his childhood streets. The sound was raw, unpolished, and utterly captivating. Every note carried the weight of poverty, of dreams deferred, of Manila mornings and Cebu nights. A red light blinked. The rules flashed. No language switching. The audience gasped. A judge slammed a hand on the buzzer. "Stop," she shouted, flustered. But Eli didn't. His voice rose, full and unstoppable, filling the hall with something bigger than rules. The energy shifted. Eyes widened. Some leaned forward, clutching their hands. Cebu's spirit, bold, proud, untamed, saturated every corner of the room. Judges whispered to each other, glancing at the manual, conflicted. But Eli's song refused to be stopped. The crowd rose, clapping in rhythm, some cheering, some crying. A rule had been broken, yes, but in its place, something alive had emerged. When the final note rang out, the hall fell silent for a heartbeat, stunned into awe. Then a judge, wiping tears, muttered, he just sang with his life." Eli stood on the stage, chest heaving, palms damp. The echoes of the audience's applause from the previous note had barely faded, yet the tension in the judges' faces was thick. One of them slammed a hand on the table, not in anger, but in shock. "This shouldn't work," he exclaimed, leaning back, eyes wide, as if trying to make sense of what he had just heard. Another judge covered her mouth, tears forming at the edges of her eyes, unsure whether to cry, cheer, or stop him. Eli's voice, raw and unpolished, carried the heartbeat of Davao streets, the warmth of a southern sun, the pride of a people who fight quietly but fiercely. Every note he sang told a story of hunger, of hope, and of relentless perseverance. Eli dropped to one knee, letting the music rise from his chest, shaking but unwavering. His voice cracked at times, but it only added depth, honesty, and power. The audience held their breath, leaning forward as if trying to catch every fragment of his soul in the air. The hall felt smaller somehow, pressed together by the sheer force of emotion emanating from the stage. Security glanced at the judges, unsure if they should intervene, but one judge waved them off, eyes glistening. "Let him finish," she whispered, almost to herself, voice thick with tears. The other judges nodded, faces softened, caught in the weight of what Eli was giving them. Every word, every note, every pause pulled at something deep inside them. It wasn't just singing. It was survival, it was pride, it was devote in a human voice, impossible to ignore. The moment was raw. The rules had faded. Only truth remained. The last note lingered in the hall, trembling like a fragile glass on the edge of a table. Silence stretched for a heartbeat, then another. And then, softly, almost imperceptibly, a judge's shoulders shook. A single tear fell, splashing against the polished table. Another judge pressed a hand to her mouth, the corners of her eyes wet, unable to look away. Eli, still on one knee, gasped for breath, sweat glistening on his forehead, the weight of every mile between Manila, Cebu, Davao, and now Baguio pressing on him. I've heard Elvis, the first judge whispered through quivering lips, voice breaking, but I've never heard survival sing like this. Eli's hands clutched the microphone stand as if it were a lifeline, his chest heaving. He could feel the cold Baguio wind in his veins, not literally, but in the way the judge's emotions mirrored the icy clarity of the mountain city, raw and unfiltered. The audience sat frozen, some wiping away tears, others leaning forward as though afraid to breathe, afraid to break the spell. A second tear slid down the cheek of another judge, who whispered, "He's not just singing, he's living every word." The words hung in the room, heavy as the fog on Baguio streets. Eli finally stood, shoulders trembling but spine unbroken, meeting the eyes of the judges. Their hands shook as they held each other's, some reaching forward to offer silent, trembling applause. For a moment, rules, lights, and cameras disappeared. There was only Eli, only the voice that carried poverty and pride, Manila streets and Cebu markets, Davao strength and Baguio cold, all in one soul-bearing performance. Tears were falling like cold rain, yet in them, a warmth no stage could ever contain. The lights dimmed, leaving only Eli in the center of the stage, his chest still rising and falling from the last note. The audience held their collective breath, waiting. The host's voice cut through the silence, trembling with excitement. And the winner of Ireland's Got Talent, against all odds, against the rules, is Eli Cruz. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the stage erupted. Golden confetti rained down like sunlight breaking through clouds. Judges leapt from their chairs, tears streaming down their faces. One rushed forward, enveloping Eli in a tight, shaking hug, while another held up his hands in disbelief, mouth open, still catching his breath. Eli sank to his knees again, overwhelmed, laughing and crying all at once. The hall echoed with applause that seemed too small for the magnitude of the moment. A poor man from the Philippines, singing. Elvis, carrying the heartbeat of Manila, the rhythm of Cebu, the pride of Davao, and the cold clarity of Baguio, had conquered Ireland, not because he followed the rules, but because he lived them. He glanced at the judges, who could only nod, wiping tears and shaking heads in awe. We've never seen anything like this," one whispered. He's more than talent. He's life itself." Eli looked out at the crowd, his voice breaking one last time. This is for my family. For my country. For all the dreams that have no stage." The audience rose to their feet, crying, cheering, and clapping, as Eli's voice soared one last time. Zamboanga proud, Manila brave, Cebu bold, Davao strong. One song, one voice, one Filipino Elvis, unstoppable and unforgettable. The lights dimmed, but the echo of Eli's journey lingered, carrying hope across oceans, reminding everyone that talent, heart, and courage cannot be measured by rules.